Listen. Do you remember the person you were when this first started? Not the version of you that's currently walking on eggshells, but the one who actually had an opinion. The one who didn't have to pre-calculate every sentence to avoid an explosion. Somewhere along the way, the deal changed. The rules you both agreed on in the beginning, the ones about mutual respect, honesty, and simple kindness, were quietly shredded while you weren't looking. Anyway, the most frustrating part isn't even that they changed the rules. It's that they did it so slowly you didn't even notice the shift until you were already trapped in the new version of the game. It started with a small exception. A joke that felt a little too sharp, a boundary that was stepped over just this once, or a demand that seemed reasonable at the time. But see, once you accepted that first change, you gave them the permit to keep rewriting the script. I mean, if you think about it, you're playing a game where the win conditions keep moving. One day, they want your total attention, the next, they're cold and distant because you're smothering them. You're exhausted because you're trying to win a match on a field that keeps tilting. And yet, you're still there, trying to figure out how to be better, so they'll go back to the original rules. Here's the thing, they aren't going back. Why would they? They've realized that as long as they keep you confused, they stay in control. They didn't just change the rules, they changed the way you see yourself. You've accepted a reality where your comfort is secondary to their whims. You aren't a partner anymore, you're a variable they've learned how to manage. Believe it or not, the most dangerous part of this dynamic aren't the big, explosive moments. It's the quiet ones. It's the Tuesday afternoon when they made a demand that felt a little off, and instead of saying something, you just swallowed it. You told yourself it wasn't worth the fight. You thought you were being flexible, but in reality, you were just lowering the bar. And yet, every time you lower that bar, they don't meet you there, they just wait for you to lower it again. Interestingly, have you noticed how the rules only seem to apply to you? They can be late, but you have to be on time. They can be moody, but you have to be the pillar of stability. They can change their mind at the last second, but if you do it, it's a betrayal of their trust. To be fair, you've become an expert at navigating this double standard. You've learned how to anticipate their needs before they even voice them, hoping that if you just get it right one time, the old version of the relationship will come back. But see, here is the thing about a game where the rules are constantly changing, you aren't supposed to win. The goal isn't for you to succeed, the goal is for you to keep trying. As long as you're busy trying to solve the puzzle of their behavior, you aren't looking at the exit. You're so focused on the next test that you've stopped asking why you're being tested in the first place. Let's just say, they've turned your empathy into a leash. Anyway, I want to ask you something. When was the last time you felt like your needs were a priority? Not just a nice to have if the timing was perfect, but a non-negotiable part of the deal. It feels like you've been relegated to the sidelines of your own life. You're the supporting character, the one who cleans up the messes and smooths over the rough edges, while they take up all the space in the room. In a way, you've accepted a version of love that requires you to be invisible. You've traded your voice for their silence, and your boundaries for their comfort. And the most heartbreaking part? You're starting to believe that this is all you deserve. You're starting to think that if you just tried a little harder, or stayed a little quieter, things would stabilize. But if you think about it, the more you give, the less they respect what's left. You're running a race where the finish line is being hauled away by the person you're running toward. Look. Have you noticed how things that used to shock you now barely register? That's the most chilling part of this whole process. In the beginning, if they had spoken to you the way they do now, you would have walked out the door and never looked back. But because the rules changed by millimeters instead of miles, you've adjusted. You've expanded your capacity for pain to accommodate their lack of control. The thing is, you aren't just accepting their behavior, you're normalizing it. You've started to build your entire day around their potential triggers. As a matter of fact, you've probably caught yourself making excuses for them to your friends or family, or even to your own reflection in the mirror. You say things like, "They're just under a lot of pressure," or "They didn't mean it that way." But if you think about it, you're the one doing the heavy lifting to keep their image intact. Anyway, why is their pressure more important than your peace? By accepting these new, unspoken rules, you've sent a clear message: you are willing to tolerate the intolerable. You've taught them that your limits are flexible and that your self-respect is negotiable. Let's just say, once they realized you wouldn't leave when they broke the first rule, they lost all incentive to follow the rest. They aren't testing the rules anymore, they're testing how much of you they can erase before you finally snap. And still, you're trying to play fair in a game that was designed to make you lose. Well, there is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from maintaining a lie you don't even believe in anymore. You're pretending that everything is fine, that this new normal is just a rough patch, but your body knows the truth. Your heart races when you hear their key in the lock. You find yourself sitting in your parked car for 10 extra minutes just to breathe before you have to go inside and face the person who keeps moving the goalposts. At the end of the day, you aren't just tired of them, you're tired of the person you've become to keep them happy. The thing is, every time you let a rule change slide without a word, you aren't being the bigger person. You're actually negotiating away your own reality. Believe it or not, they see your silence as an agreement. When they treat you with cold indifference and you respond with extra kindness hoping to fix their mood, you aren't solving the problem. You're reinforcing it. You're showing them that the worse they behave, the more effort you will put in. In a way, you've accidentally incentivized their toxicity. I mean, if you think about it, what are you actually holding on to? Is it the person they are now, or the ghost of the person they were in the first place? You're so busy mourning the bold rules that you haven't realized the person you're dealing with now has no intention of ever bringing them back. To be fair, it's hard to admit that someone you care about has decided that your comfort is a fair price to pay for their convenience. But see, that is exactly what has happened. They've decided that their need to control the narrative is more important than your right to feel safe and respected. Anyway, how much of your own intuition have you suppressed to make this work? You've ignored that gut feeling that told you something was wrong months ago. You've dismissed your own hurt because they told you that you were too sensitive or that you were remembering it wrong. But let's just say, you aren't crazy. You're just being managed. You've accepted a role where your only job is to provide stability for someone who refuses to be stable. On top of that, consider the mental space this is taking up. You're playing 4D chess every single day just to have a basic conversation. You're calculating their mood, the time of day, and the potential fallout before you even ask a simple question. Interestingly, while you're doing all that work, they aren't thinking about your feelings at all. They are simply moving through the world according to the rules they've rewritten to suit themselves. Still, you're holding on, hoping for a fair outcome in a game where they own the board, the dice, and the rulebook. So, here is the question you've been avoiding: what happens if you just stop playing? If the rules were changed without your consent, you aren't actually obligated to follow them. You've been treating this like a legal contract that you're forced to honor, but in reality, it's a hostage situation where you're the one holding the door shut. The moment you decide that your peace is worth more than their approval, the game loses its power. Anyway, I know it feels like if you stand up now, everything will fall apart. And to be fair, it might. If a relationship is held together by your constant submission to ever-changing rules, it isn't a partnership, it's a performance. You have to be willing to let the performance end. You have to be willing to say, I didn't agree to this, and I'm not doing it anymore. Believe it or not, the world doesn't end when you start prioritizing your own sanity. The truth is, they aren't going to hand your power back to you. You have to take it. You have to stop waiting for them to realize they're being unfair and start realizing that you've been unfair to yourself. Look. It's time to stop trying to win a rigged game and start walking off the field. Because the only way to truly win against someone who keeps changing the rules is to stop being a player in their league. You aren't losing the relationship, you're gaining yourself back.